Yes. Brother.
You met many of the early Swamis, Prabhavanandaji, Bhavitranji, Asheshanandaji, Shraddhanandaji.
Yes.
So could you share some of your favorite anecdotes about them?
Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, would say, realize God, it's in the palm of your hand. We always thought it was so easy. When I first came to Vedanta, I thought, okay, I'm 15, by the time I'm 20, I'll be a realized soul. And then I'll join the convent. It's just, you could shut your cloud. It's like, oh, it's so easy. Because he made us seem like it was the easiest thing in the world. He said, realizing God is so much easier than quitting smoking. He did both. He said, realizing God, it's so much easier than going to college. Because we just don't put our minds there. We don't put our concentration there. He said, every day think, this is the day that the Lord will come. This is the day that the Lord will appear to me. Never think that it's going to be some distant day down the road. It's this day the Lord will appear to me. He had such tremendous devotion to Swami Brahmananda, who was his spiritual teacher, that he would say things like, one day on a Father's Day, he said, he was quite elderly, maybe a year or two before his death. And he would say, my children, I bless you. And they went, no, Maharaj blesses you. Swami Brahmananda, Maharaj blesses you. He could never say, it was always about his teacher. And his great brother disciple, Suji Maharaj, who became the vice president of the order, said he was second to none in devotion to the Guru in Guru Bhakti. And he sort of inspired us in that bhakti path, even though his classes on the Vivekachudamani were so inspiring. But really, he sort of lived, moved, and breathed in that devotional attitude towards God. Swami Asheshananda was sort of the wild man of God. Swami Tathagata was another pretty great wild man of God. But I'm sure you've heard about how Swami Tathagatanandaji mauled me. Have you heard that? All right, I'm going to tell you. I went to make pranam to Swami Tathagatanandaji, our beloved Swami here. He was very fond of me, and I was fond of him, but he was kind of like 85 going on 14. And he often didn't know his own strength. So I went down and reached over to make pranam, and he grabbed my hand, and he squeezed it. I went, ow, which struck him funny. He thought I was kidding, but he was very strong. And then he twisted, and I went, ow. And then he twisted it more, and I went, ow, you're hurting. And then someone said, Mara, you're really hurting your hand. I went, oh, my hand swelled up. I lost the use of it for 5 weeks. I yelled at him so much. And I sent him every bill from the physicotherapy. And he felt so mortified. He told me after years, he said, I felt so bad I couldn't come back to Santa Barbara. I said, we love you so much. I was mad at the time, but it was done with such open-hearted affection. I was just like, and it made me remember him so much. I never forgot it. But you see, it was the sweetness and the simplicity of the man. Swami Asheshananda was a wild man, but you knew he was going right at the truth. We were in the hall in Portland is not too unlike this. Over to the side is the place where Colleen played the piano. And one day in the middle of the lecture, she was sitting there on the piano bench. She had started the song, finished. She was middle of the lecture. And then he looked over her and said, stop thinking that. It's like, you couldn't get away with anything. I remember sitting in the second row while he was giving a lecture. The lecture was to start at 8 o'clock. The class was to start at 8 o'clock at night. It never started on time. You could hear him upstairs thumping back and forth. Da-da-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Then you hear the water going, washing his hands. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. He'd show up about a half an hour later. And by the time you're like, because we all got up early. And so he would be, and somehow the man in the first row who was right over where you are, Marsh, he sort of started looking over at something else, and Swami Asheshananda said, You look at me when I'm talking to you. I did not come here to talk to a wall, because I have touched the feet of Holy Mother. And when he said that, the place was like electrified. It had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with the respect shown to the Divine Mother, because he had touched the feet of Holy Mother. The room, you could I asked him once, I had so much nerve with him. I asked him, I said, Swami, would you ever want to be reborn again? And I thought he would say something about Holy Mother. And instead he said, only if I could serve Swami Sarvapriyananda, he was the attendant and the secretary of Swami Sarvapriyananda, direct disciple of Ramakrishna, the first general secretary of the order. And he would just shake his head and say, he was so kind. He was so kind. And he said, Swami Sarvapriyananda never scolded me. Never a harsh word. And we're going like, yeah? And then he said, I was all made up, went to New York. Swami Nikhilananda. He scolded me and scolded me and scolded me for 5 years without interruption. Scolded me and scolded me. So he said that more than made up for his time with Swami Sarvapriyananda, who never scolded him once. The love that he had for him. Oh my God, I remember once I went to him and said, Swami, I want to be humble. And there was just the two of us in the room. It was like going to confession or going to the executioner's chair, because we went upstairs. There was just a little room, like an 8x8 room, a chair here and a chair here. And I'm sitting there like, okay. And I said, Swami, I want to be humble. You are humble. I said, I'm not humble. He said, you are humble. Which the fact that I'm arguing with this realized soul, a disciple of Holy Mother, would sort of give him an inkling that I wasn't the most humble person in the room. And he said, no, you are humble. I said, Swami, I want to be like another nun, who was another nun that we had. It was the sweetest, kindest, most humble. She's just like a breath of air. She's so saintly, humble, self-effacing. And I was up in Portland with her, and she is his disciple. I said, I want to be like her. And he said, no, she has her own problems. And he said, you be yourself. And it was such a great lesson for me. Don't try to be humble on someone else's terms. Don't try to be pious. And above all, don't be fake. Be exactly who you are, warts and all. And that is more humility than putting this fake veneer of piety and trying to be something that you're not. It was such a great lesson for me. Hard going, especially when you're arrogant like I am. But it was wonderful. I remember once we went, and we decided that because the Portland shrine had never been cleaned, I think in the entire 50 years, 60 years that he'd been there, ever. And we're from Santa Barbara. He said, Santa Barbara, everything is tip-top. and Portland is like they had in the shrine, they had curtains that had once been white, I guess. But they were they were in tatters. They were literally in tatters, and they were brown and sticky from the incense. Because, of course, no one had ever aired it out. And the windows were brown from the incense. And so we thought, well, we're Santa Barbara nuns. We're going to go with there and we're going to clean it. And the thought in the unmentioned thought in the back of the head was, we will get praise. People will say, what a great job these nuns did. Aren't they great? The place has never been so nice. We thought that we were doing him a favor. Oh, no one ever did Swami Sheshananda a favor, I promise you. Because Swami Sarvapriyananda had told him, do not be a leaning vine. Do not be a creeper. You stand on your own feet and you take responsibility. And Swami Sheshananda made that the motto of his life. You cannot close a door. You cannot open a door for him. If you tried to open a door, he'd go, that's okay, that's okay. He would take the door himself and he would close the door himself, because Swami Sarvapriyananda had told him, do not be a leaning vine. He was going to take responsibility. So he took that to heart. So we, in all of our arrogance, went in there and we started cleaning. It was so satisfying because you'd see the brown running down the windows. And we're like, yeah, this is great before and after picture, right? The egotism that goes with that. So we're there, and Sarada Chaitanya comes in and says, Swami wants to talk to you in the library. And we thought, okay. There's Mother Kali coming right up the line. So we go in there, and we're standing up, waiting for him to come in. He goes, sit down. So we sat down, and he said, get out. And we stood up. He said, sit down. And we sat down. He went, get out. And during this time, I've realized that I've stopped breathing. Seriously, I had stopped breathing. And I realized that when he was yelling at us, don't you ever, that I could hear the windows rattling. He was well into his 80s. He was about this tall. And the windows were rattling from the force of his Shakti coming out. He said, don't you ever come here and do that. You asked my express permission for everything. I am responsible for this center. It was like, uh-oh. And then, get out. And so we stood up, and then again he told us to sit down, and so we sat down, and we were forbidden to come early to the center, and we were forbidden to go sightseeing, in which we were like, thank you. Because every afternoon we were forced into sightseeing from like 1:30 in the afternoon until right at Arati time, where we would go to the rose garden and look at the roses that were sticks this high, and you could look and see what the tags were on it. And then we would go to every community college and walk around the community college. And then I cannot tell you, we were so like, thank you, God. We just wanted to take a little rest. We wanted to read a book. We wanted to do anything that wasn't being in a car being driven around. But no, by that afternoon, he felt badly about it. And he said, no, we could come to the center and we were going to resume our sightseeing. But it was a wonderful lesson. Because it's like he caught that egotism like a bad smell coming out of a kitchen. It was like, turn on the fan. It was that tremendous purity of heart that he had that would go right through you. Right through you. He had such profound humility himself. His love for his brother disciples was so profound, he would never get rid of anything they gave him, including the little aviator hat that Swami Nikhilananda gave him in the 40s or 50s, which he wore until the day he died. I can't tell you how badly it looked. I can't tell you how badly it smelled. The sweaters that he wore, many, many people gave him things, and he put them in the drawer, never opened. Because he was always going to wear the sweater that Swami Nikhilananda gave him. He was always going to wear the beret that Swami Ratajananda gave him. They didn't have any elbows left. He would wear this coat that you can't believe how bad the coat was. This is what he wore around. He would go sometimes, and this was a glorious event, he would go sightseeing with us. And I remember once we went to the fish hatchery, and it was fascinating because he would say, you can see the salmon spawning, and they go upstream. He said, no, yes, this is how we must be. We are going upstream. All of society goes downstream towards sense enjoyments. Spiritual aspirants, you go upstream. You have to go against nature. So he's giving this talk to about 10 of us who are standing around him. Meanwhile, there's probably 50 other tourists who's wondering who this guy is because he's got a brown bag of prasad like this. He looks like a bag lady. His hair is out like that. He's got this coat on. Seriously. And we're all following him around like little children. Once he took us to a mountain there, not Mount St. Helens, but not Mount Rainier, but one of the big mountains in the Portland area. Grand mountain, and he took us to, there's a hotel that was built there probably during the 30s, one of the WPA projects. Magnificent hotel, because to get a look at the mountain, because the mountain is Shiva, and the water is Mother, the Divine Mother. We go up Mount Hood, it is Mount Hood that we have gone to. So we go up to Mount Hood, and the best view of Mount Hood is in the bar. Does he think twice about bringing all of us into a bar? Of course not. He brings us up the stairs, and we go into this bar where there's huge glass looking out to the mountain. And there's probably 20 of us on this trip because it was an outing, 20, 25 of us. And he's looking at the mountain, and he's there by the glass, telling us about Shiva, the eternal, always at rest, always in meditation. And the rest of us are back trying to hear what he says, and I end up being sort of abutted to the bar. And this man kind of taps my shoulder, and he said, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" Seriously. And I said, "No, I'm with him." And he looks at him. True story. He had no sense of how he should fit in with anybody. He definitely had a drummer of his own that he was going to, and it never changed his entire life. When he would do Chandi for you, you felt like the world had changed and the world had moved on its axis. I remember once I went to him with a really difficult problem, really difficult situation, and I felt him pray. And then I felt actually my mind was being moved and kind of, and I never was in that place again. It takes a person of tremendous purity and power to be able to do that. But more than anything else, he instilled on us that we could do it ourselves. Swami Pravrajika used to say, "You will realize God. You will realize God." It wasn't like it was down the line when you got around to it. No, you will in this very life. In this very life. All of us will by the grace of the Lord. All of us will attain that because it's who we are in the first place. All these great saints, they were never about them. It was always about the power inherent in us. When I first came to Swami Pravrajika, I was 15 years old. I was wearing this little mini skirt, and I went in for my appointment, and I thought, oh, Swami, that means Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, right? I thought Beatles, So I had this appointment to learn how to meditate. So I was on the couch, and he was sitting in his chair, and he said, "Do you know how to sit cross-legged?" And I'm wearing a mini skirt. So I started, and he said, no, that's okay. And then I said, "Swami, have you realized God?" And he said, "Yes. And you will too." So it was never about listen to me because I'm the wise, holy one. It was about don't think that you don't have this capacity yourself. You do have this, and you will realize that. Above all these holy people that I was with, it was never about them. It was like, look what is within yourself. Look at your own capacities that you have. Just as our Swami is doing with us today.